Hey everybody, this is Via Williams. It's so good to see you again. It is Wednesday, so you know that we are back with all things real estate, kind of. I hope you guys enjoyed Ben Kinney last week. I was blown away by all of the tax stuff that he went through with Tom Wheelwright. And I have never needed that more than I need it now. So hopefully it helped all of you guys. And it was really cool. We've seen Chris, we've seen Jesse Princiato, our president of mortgage. We've just had a lot of really great superstars on lately. And today is no exception. So I am really, really excited to bring Abby Powell to you today. And I think that it would be helpful if I give a bio, because Abby is so unique to the normal guests that we have on here, right? And because today's topic is what makes world-class marketing. And I think part of what makes world-class marketing is world-class marketers. And Abby Powell is the new Chief Marketing Officer for Place. But the cool thing is, prior to that, she spent more than 3 years. And listen to this. I just want you to hear all the brands. I want you to listen to all the brands that she did. She spent more than 3 years at Keurig Dr. Pepper, where she was a senior director of marketing when she left there. And her job involved leading marketing efforts for soda brands like Dr. Pepper and Crush. So far, there's a lot of brands you probably know. And she previously worked at Reckitt and PepsiCo, where she led marketing and innovation for brands like French's Mustard, Lay's, and Doritos. So I personally know every single one of those brands. And I've learned so much from Abby so far. I was like, do you want to just come on the webinar and teach a whole bunch of real estate agents how to market? So thank you, Abby, for joining us. And thank you for teaching us today how we can market.
Thank you, Via. I appreciate the time this afternoon.
Well, I'm really excited. Like, I've learned so much from you in the conversations we've had. And now we have, all of these, my audience, all of these real estate agents watching. So I think that we should probably start foundationally. I think we should talk about, because you're an expert in consumer marketing. And the cool thing about real estate agents is we are direct to consumer marketers. There's no middlemen, right? We market directly to the consumer. So, what are the kind of foundational teams that any company, but certainly a real estate team and real estate agent should do to figure out and create great marketing?
Yeah, great question. For me, it always starts 100% with really understanding your consumer. So that's, being direct to consumer, no middleman. That's a wealth of information really coming to you about exactly who your consumer is and what they need. So that's a fantastic place to really start from. You really need to dive in and understand those consumer needs. What's their lifestyle? What are their pain points? What is the problem that they're really trying to solve? One of the things that we talked about a lot in doing innovation for some of those brands and in developing marketing campaigns is really, you're trying to fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve. So it keeps you, it's really puts you in the consumer shoes, and keeps you in that really consumer-centric, really focused place. If you're loving the problem, not your personal solution, you're automatically really redirecting to what that consumer needs. And that's just going to really help formulate the right message and make sure you're reaching them with what they are really wanting to hear, and what they need. So it really helps architect where you need to go. So, really understanding that consumer. And you get to spend a ton of time with your consumers, which is fantastic. I know in CPG, we would spend hours like shadowing consumers, spending time in their homes, in their kitchens, in their living rooms, seeing like what they were doing, how they were consuming different products, understanding what workarounds they were formulating, to meet their needs. If there's something that was on the go, how they would change how they would pack it with them. Lots of different things to really go deeper on those pain points so we could start architecting solutions and start architecting some of the messages.
What's interesting to me is I think that real estate agents, we know our consumers better than, we know them amazingly well. We spend time with them in their own homes. Literally, we they tell us what keeps them up at night. We know what their biggest problems are. We know what their stressors are. But I wonder, on a foundational level, I wonder if most real estate agents spend enough time getting this clarity up front before they launch into actually any type of marketing campaign, design, process, right? I don't think they do. I have a feeling that the knowledge they have of their consumer, of our consumer, isn't always translated, the thoughtfulness of that isn't always translated into our marketing, right? So I think that that's the difference, like with a lot of these consumer brands you're talking about, they just spend an inordinate amount of time thinking that through and making their decisions based on that.
Yeah, 100%. I like to say, really flex your empathy muscle, put yourself in that consumer's shoes and take advantage of that. That's the foundation for your positioning. The standard marketing framework we would talk about is STP, segmenting, targeting, positioning. So you have to get that segmenting and that targeting and that understanding right and understand those pain points before you can really even get to positioning and kind of round out that equation. So it's absolutely so important to walk a mile in their shoes and keep flexing that empathy muscle.
So, segmenting is easy in real estate because there's buyers, there's sellers. You've got, some of your client base is a farm area that you farm. Some of your client base might be, past clients. There's so many different segments. And then targeting is how do you best target each of those segments, right? And the positioning is, basically how are you the best solution to solve their problem?
Right. What do you uniquely do best? That's getting to your value proposition, right? Thinking about what do competitors do in your market? What is it that you provide? It's not just the service, it's soup to nuts. What really sets you apart, and marrying that up with that consumer target. You can be the best at luxury, but if you're targeting farms, for example, that doesn't obviously make any sense, right? So what is it for that particular consumer? And it has to be focused on that segment, that consumer that marries up with your unique skills and what you do best. And that's what's going to be the foundation of your positioning and where you launch into all your messaging development and really build from there. But getting that marriage of what the consumer needs and what you do best is really at the heart.
So, really, that's positioning, right?
That's 100%.
When we talk about messaging strategy, that's really what you're talking about is strengths and what you do differently. What else do you think about with that?
Strengths and what you do differently. What the consumer needs, again, falling in love with the problem. That's often a great headline and way in. You want to lead with what they need, not necessarily 100% diving straight into the solution. And then just making sure there's that distinctiveness. What is different in your entire proposition and what really helps to make it stand out? So making sure it's very unique and distinctive.
I love that. I was thinking about you've done soda, you've done detergents, you've done all sorts of different brands. I'm wondering if there's any examples of that to help kind of drive the point home.
Yeah. So let's say we can use detergent for an example, right? Think about it. It's hard to think of a category that, has less overlap. It's pretty, everything is going to clean. It's going to clean your clothes.
It's true.
But even in a category like that, brands really start to pull apart what their unique position is and what's the thing that they're going to lean in on. So some might lean in on brightest whites. I think I remember a handful of those campaigns along the way. And then some are on different scents and bringing that forward. There's a whole lines now of new scents and additives. So it's just a different, really, unique way in. And some are value positioned and really focused on price. And it's taking what a certain consumer needs. If it's a value-seeking consumer, they're not going to care as much about some of those other things, and they can focus on price. Or if it's a very, high level of clean psychographic segmentation, you can focus on more of the whitening power. And really, there's lots of different ways in. So putting yourself in those shoes and making sure it's pulled apart from the other elements of the competitive set in the category.
Okay, I'm laughing because I am such a sucker for all the Mrs. Meyer's products. I literally, everything in my house is that basil scent Mrs. Meyer stuff, all of
Yes.
their product. And I don't even know how well it cleans. I just like the smell.
Exactly. And somebody else would lean into Clorox, right? Because they want the cleaning power of bleach, and it's the
So
sanitation and like the super bacteria elements of it. So people just have different needs, and you lean into a certain segment and both can work, right?
But here's the thing. I couldn't tell you what their messaging is. I don't even remember what their messaging is or how I pulled it off the shelf the first time. Couldn't recall, couldn't tell you, So, I mean, that's what's interesting about it. I must have read somewhere on their labeling that they were like aromatherapy, or that they were, there was a scent involved. I must have read that. And that's what I'm just trying to remember. Like, the actual messaging to that, it's everywhere. It had to have been on the label.
Yeah, absolutely. Their packaging is super distinctive, and they use fonts and colors that like communicate scent. Like it's the soft green and pastels. The colors
green.
Actually,
my color's green. I buy the Mrs. Meyer's green.
Yeah, people shop by color, and there's people that buy the Mrs. Meyer's yellow because that's lemon, but you think about the totality of the offering, it's all those different unique elements that layer up to that distinctive positioning. So it is the font, it's the color, it's the overall impression that you get from the entire product and the way it's positioned in the marketplace, even the channel you buy it in. You probably bought it in Target or, some other retailers that are more along those lines, it all kind of comes together.
Well, so let's talk about that. Let's move into graphics, since we're already talking about that. Like, I mean, so if people buy in color, now I'm taking this back to real estate agents, like we have to be really consistent. And if you're going to have a branding with a predominant color, you probably better stick to that color on everything, right? Because I'm visualizing Mrs. Meyer's right now. All the stuff is super consistent.
Yeah, consistency is key. Like it's your brand. Like brands are timeless. There's facelifts that come into play, and you have a little bit of timely evolution. You don't want to have some of the retro 80s look going on now, but like there's consistency. If you think about trademarks, brand names, they stay and endure, and it creates these mental hierarchies for people to remember. So you do remember even the color, even if you don't remember the name, and or you'll take enough away to make that buying decision easy from that consistency. People have to see the same thing over and over and over to really start to get that to sink in. So consistency is 100% critical.
On a granular level, I have heard everybody, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but I've heard that you're supposed to use the exact same headshot on all of your assets. So on your LinkedIn, on your Instagram, on your Facebook, on your email signature, right? It's supposed to be the same headshot. And I've kind of taken that to heart. And when I switch a headshot, I usually switch it across the board on everything, which is just one of those small little things. But I think consistency is really important. And I think partly, Abby, it's that you want people to trust that they know what they're going to get and they know what they're getting. That if consistency shows them that. So I think there's this subconscious like, well, Via's consistent. She keeps sending things. She keeps targeting me. The look and feel is really consistent. I feel like she would be consistent with my house, with taking this asset and selling it. I think that's a big part of it. I think trustworthiness is a big part of real estate.
Yeah. And trustworthiness is a big part of brands and branding. Yeah. Like, why brands even kind of came to be originally is it's all about, communicating a promise and communicating that consistency. You want to eliminate consumer confusion. People don't want to work hard to figure out what to select. They want to pull from what they know, and like that reassurance and that promise. Don't want to make people work hard to figure out and really get into their rational mindset all the time. And like the collectiveness of your consistency, the way you show up, some of the emotional decision making come into play as well.
Well, so, emotional decision making. So here's the thing about real estate. It's interesting to me anyway. I find that there's usually one partner really laser focused on the purchase. And then there's one partner that's kind of focused on handling the house sale, right? And so if you're trying to go get a listing, for example, I find there's less emotion with that. I find there's more emotion involved with the buy side of it. With the buy side, they don't feel like they're paying you as a real estate agent because we're paid by the seller. But on the listing, they feel like they are writing us a check, actually. Like they're writing us a check on the listing side, And so it is interesting because I think that I don't feel the emotion, but I think it's there. I really do think it's there. I think that sellers even make these data-driven decisions, but ultimately it's kind of emotion that's pushing them over the edge in that final moment. I think it's all kind of emotion.
Absolutely. And how many offers that came with the personal letter end up being the thing that influences the final decision, people do, they use their rational brain and they use their emotional brain, and that's just part of making decisions.
So how can we help that along in our marketing?
Great question. Going back to the listening and the empathy, especially thinking about the buyer side of the equation, since that is a very emotional piece of the consideration. What are you hearing? What do people need? You can help be that consultant and manage through really all the different emotional elements that they're bringing. How does that start factoring in what they're trying to solve, the problems they're trying to solve, and how does that come back into your messaging, and even how you show up for them as a consistent part of your service and what you're providing in the moment. So there's getting them in the top of the funnel via the messaging, and then that consistency in the moment. That's all part of building your brand too. That showing up and how you're interacting and how you follow up, that's all the brand. So goes back to kind of understanding that consumer and that listening.
Really, really good. So, we don't necessarily have to get specific. We can. I want to move into medium, and I'm curious probably more about frameworks behind it. How do you, so we've talked about, you've spent the time, you really know your customer, what keeps them up at night, what their problems are that how you can solve them, how you're uniquely wired to solve them and your company is built to solve them. How do you kind of decide what mediums to go in?
Yeah, great question. And consumers see so many messages. I think it's 4,000 to 10,000 messages a day on average. It's just absolutely.
You told me that, and I'm still reeling over that. So I just want everyone to hear that because we verified that. So 4,000 to 10,000 messages a day. I don't even know how that's possible.
It's shocking. I mean, there's a lot that you're clearly tuning out. It's really pretty amazing how much is coming through. But think about all the messaging, how much you scroll through even on your Twitter feed. That's all a message. And a lot of the people even that you're seeing are giving you a message. You're, trying to get them to follow you. So there's hundreds of messages there, all the things you see in social, you're on Spotify, you're hearing things, all the time. So there's lots of different ways that these messages are coming through. So universally, no matter what you're selecting, from a standpoint, you have to be simple, memorable, and breakthrough, because it's noisy. So
simple. Wait, say that again. Simple,
memorable, and breakthrough.
Okay. Are you going to walk us through each one of those?
I can certainly talk through each one. So simple, think about if you're on your phone, right? You're scrolling through these dozens or hundreds of messages. It has to be thumb stopping. You're going to have to be clear enough that people can get it. And the average attention span, 1 second, 2 seconds?
Yeah.
That's not enough time to take in a super complex message. So making sure that your value proposition is clean and clear, and that really quick, 1, 2 second thumb stopping kind of approach. And think about even what you remember. It's probably the simplest of headlines, the things that really have that, handful of words that you can understand right away. And that really feeds into the memorable piece too. You have to be able to comprehend it before you can even remember it.
For sure.
And make sure that it sticks. So
it's a lot harder to be simple. Like it's like the fewer words that you use, the harder and longer that takes, ironically.
Isn't the quote, like I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time? I think that's like Churchill.
No, but I get it. I didn't know that one, but yeah, exactly.
Love that quote.
I love it.
So true. Because you got to get the most impact out of every word and just make sure you're keeping things, really distilled to their most important essence. Mm-hmm. So simple is really important. And then memorable, with that many messages, what's going to make it like stick in your consciousness, in your brain, in your memory? That's where even some of like frequency of seeing things, and we talked about building a brand and that consistency that comes into play there as well. Like you might have to say the same thing and a few different times to make sure that it clicks in. And then
is there a number? Is there like a particular number? Because I've heard 7, but I don't know if that's like conjecture or urban myth, but I've heard like someone has to see something 7 times to make a decision.
Heard similar. I don't think I have a verified actual stat on how many times, but just doing the math of how many messages you see, you have to make sure that it's a handful before it's going to stick. The first time you might take away a little bit, but you won't remember the brand, right? There's so many elements of it, what they're trying to say and who said it. Like the 1-2 punch is going to take a couple tries to get those things both married together so that you have that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then what about so it was simple, memorable, and breakthrough?
And breakthrough. Yeah. So breakthrough, like going back to your consumer again, you're going to need to make sure you understand where they are, both like digitally and in the landscape of consuming ads, so that you're at the right place, to deliver the right message. And then has enough of a hook to like make that thumb stopping kind of effort. So thinking about where they're going to be on their like kind of digital life cycle, what's the right thing of marrying the message to the medium to make sure it breaks through. There's things that would work in Twitter where you're really short attention span, and something over email. We have long form content where they might take things through. So you got to kind of think through both the medium and the message. It's 2 sides of the same coin.
So, I'm just trying to think. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you could think of a hook, like a hook point that was really good that jumps out at you, what would it be? I know I'm trying to think of one too. But
I know it's hard on the spot, right? Like
it is.
So like I'm looking a lot as I'm looking at stuff for Place as we're building out some marketing things, and was looking at even some real estate marketing or other B2B marketing. So SAP was one that I actually drew some inspiration for. They had that campaign, like the best run businesses run SAP. Like it's very simple and memorable and breakthrough and like really tailored to their audience. They're looking at enterprise customers. Clear definition of like what their problem is going to be, of like how they're like trying to scale their business. And, as you're like, people have like business icons and things that they want to look up to, and seeing those as like trust marks, as brands, we're able to pull on a lot of different equities to build that message. So really simple and memorable and breakthrough. For like an example, that's a little non-standard from a B2B example.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wrote a book actually called Hook Point. I can't remember who wrote it. He was the guy that wrote 1 Million Followers. Maybe Robin can look it up for us. But it was really, really good. The whole book was on how to write a good hook. I mean, that is how important that is. It's in your email subject lines. It's in your headlines on social media. Really any digital or print asset, like your hook is that's what's going to make people look, really, So that's great. And I think a hook is part of breakthrough. That's awesome.
Yep. And it's back to the problem, like solving their problem, like you're getting them with their problem on that as well. So
what about call to action? I know that, consumer and a consumer good, like if you look at Doritos, like the call to action is pick me up and buy me. Like ultimately I buy the blue bag, I get that. But for us, in real estate, the sales process is them hiring me. It's not buying the house. Like the sales process ends with them signing an agreement with me to either work with me as their buyer agent or work with me as their listing agent, right? So, I often think about this. I'm like, well, do I want the call to action be that they come onto my website and plug in their address to get the value of their home? Do I want the call to action to be direct? Like, you call me and let's set up an appointment. Do I want the call to action to be, hey, here I am, just come search for a home on my website? Here I am, I'm going to be at the open house on Saturday. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Do we do all of them? Do we do just some of them? How do you figure out like the best call to action?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the marketing answer. It depends. Always a good one. But
is that the marketing answer?
It's a very marketing answer, but people are on different parts of the funnel and like may need different things at different times. So, like if you're coming down and like they are getting close to wanting to list, you'll have a very different, more direct call to action than if you're just trying to really start to get to know people in the area. That's where you'll be doing more of just like, come learn about me and like want to get your information. Think about the objective, that you're trying to solve for what part of the funnel, and then you'll have a few different options that will start to materialize. If it's part of just an awareness driven campaign, you probably just want to drive people to check out your website and hopefully gate it, get some information, like want to learn more. It's a little bit softer because you don't have any relationship established yet at all. So your objective is probably a little higher funnel and your call to action is a little less pointed and direct. But as they keep moving through, you continue to stair step on that and with a little bit more directness.
So for all of our real estate, operators that are watching and listening, right? I think that's really important to think about. Like, you have a funnel, whether you're a single real estate agent or you run a huge team or brokerage, even, you have a funnel. The top of the funnel is I'm in the very beginning stage of just thinking about a house, right? Down to I think I'm getting ready to like look at houses, and maybe, the next step might be call a lender. The next step might be like, I'm actively going to look for houses and start going to open houses. And then it might be, I'm going to, interview real estate agents and so on. Right. And so what I liked about Abby's answer is it does depend, and we need to be filling our pipeline and filling our funnels. And so we have to think about marketing that's going to bring in all points of that pipeline so that there's a constant flow and we have a predictable business.
Yeah.
That was really, really helpful. What about tracking? These are, even the largest real estate team, Abby, is what we would call small business, for the most part. What kind of, what's important to track? How often, how do we use that the best in marketing?
Yeah, like reporting on how your stuff is performing. Yeah, there's a few different things. I mean, you want to understand what is working and what's not, and what might be performing better than other things. So just doing some simple A/B testing is important when you're looking at tracking. Looking at what people are responding to. So on social, you have a lot of the engagement metrics, and email, you have more of like the open rate. And you can take a look at like what messaging you're putting out there. Very simply, what is getting more likes and engagement than something else. That's something you might want to double down on. What's getting more converted into, getting their information, getting them to your website. You can track that to see what's really working. Like, just keeping in mind, you're trying to measure engagement with you as a brand or your business. So what is any sort of signal that people are looking and leaning in? So pretty high level, but there's a lot of different ways that you can apply that to just kind of keep sharpening your message.
Well, I can share one. I mean, I was just thinking about it when you're talking about it. On my podcast, one way we did an A/B split test is we were tweaking titles. But you could do it. Let's use it for email. I've done it for email too, where I've done the exact same email, and then I said, Robin, I'm going to give you 2 subject lines. Send half of these emails using this subject line, same email, by the way, but send the other half using this subject line. And the first subject line said like 3 ways to get more listings. And then the second subject line said, get more listings tomorrow. And the 3 ways to get more listings got way more open. So then the next week when I sent an email around, I thought, a list seems to work based on that last one. So now I'm going to say 3 things not to do to get listings. And then the other one's going to say three best practices to do for listings. And then, the not to do perform better. So then the next week, and you just keep iterating and iterating until you realize like what works and what doesn't work. And that's it. That's what A/B split testing is. It is nothing fancy at all. You can do it with headlines and social media ads. You can really do it in anything.
Yeah, and
it's
just
not
remember,
fancy.
Yeah, take the time to do it. Like put it in your schedule and like run it and like know you're going into it with a test. A lot of times we just like get to running and gunning and like take a moment at the beginning. What's the objective? What's the best way that I would know yes or no? And remember to come back and check your results. Just design it as part of the process that you're always going to come back to those KPIs. Even if you don't have a fancy dashboard and, a lot of data analysis tools, just simple things like open rate and engagement, check one versus the other and keep iterating. That's great builds.
Yeah, I love that. What do you see companies do wrong a lot that just drives you bonkers?
A lot of people try and just be too much to too many people, and that results in just not taking much of a point of view with anything. And, then it just kind of gets lost in the noise. Like it's the worst thing to do is to have somebody be indifferent. I'd rather be hated than have you be indifferent, because then there's just no engagement whatsoever.
Oh, that's interesting. You'd rather have someone be hated than be indifferent. Yeah, that's good. So, because if you're indifferent, you're blending. You're just nothing.
Nothing, just background noise. So, like if there's some response, there's some engagement, and there's 2 sides to a coin. So usually, if something is not liked, there's a similar, hopefully larger set that like really, really responds well to it. But being just getting that indifferent reaction is not a great place to be, because then you won't be simple or memorable or breakthrough. It's just all going to fade.
Yeah, it's like, I think about that sometimes when I see companies that take a really like specific political stand. I think to myself, you are really alienating a percentage of the population, but you're probably ingratiating yourself massively to enough of a percentage to obviously to sustain their business, because I see it and they keep doing it. And so it's fascinating to me, how people kind of choose. You can get really polarizing. It's just interesting, kind of to your point.
Yeah, you just got to pick what it is. I mean, it doesn't even have to be like politics, maybe like, one pretty far out example, but even in like your simple like ways of communicating, trying to appease everyone just waters everything down, even on like close end stuff, like what your business even is. If you're trying to appeal to everyone, all price points, all different aspects, all buyers, sellers, everything, like it's just going to be too much and not breakthrough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's really, really true in real estate, especially. All right. Well, we're going to wrap with this question. If you could only give 3 marketing tips or like three pieces of advice, to everybody listening, what would it be?
Great question. So I actually had a former mentor and a boss, Dr. Pepper, who had a great saying that's like, great marketing is top of mind, deep in heart, and close at hand. So it's nice and catchy.
That, deep in heart.
Yeah, love it. And it's something that's really easy to remember. And I think it's a great framework to like kind of think about and go through from an advice perspective. So top of mind, people have to know you, right? And like, this is something that I think in real estate, even as a consumer, before I joined the industry, people do really well. Like you get served drip campaigns, like I get recipe books from people and all kinds of things. I know my agent, and we have great auto plans, everything like set. That's great. And from brands, like in the other categories, other spaces, this is all your great top of mind advertising that consistently we talked about. Just got to make sure people know who you are. But then deep in heart is the next one. And that's really important to me, and something that I feel like we need to continue to push ourselves on. And that's really coming back to relevance, I feel like, in this space.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get the thing that is most compelling and that people want to engage with and want to interact with? Like that's not just something that gets the direct mail piece that gets set on the counter and never really read. It's got to be at that right time with the right message, and making sure that it's something that people really can lean into and want to interact. So remember, you're trying to build not just the awareness, but also that relevance and being deep at heart, and they have to work together. And then the last one being close at hand, like just removing friction from the process. Like that can mean a lot of things, but don't make it hard to have people work with you. Don't make it hard to buy your product. Where are there points of friction in the process that you can design out? Make it easy. People don't want to work very hard to make decisions, to buy things. Like we have enough decision fatigue in our lives. Like make it easy for people.
Oh, for sure. There should be you should be the easiest person to get a hold of. And that should be so crystal clear. Amen. Yes. Very, very, very well said. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I feel like this was like a little mini master's degree in marketing for everybody, because while we didn't necessarily pull out real estate postcards on this particular one, this is more high level, a way to think about marketing, a way to think about your frameworks, right? As we dive into some of our shift tactics that we are going to, coming up, what is everything, every single thing that we spend money on has to be scrutinized right now. And so we have to really, really, I think, start putting more upfront time thinking about, okay, what is the outcome we want from this marketing piece that we're going to spend money on? What is the call to action going to be? How are we going to measure success on this? How can we ensure this is going to the right segment with the right message and using the right medium? We have to just really use our brain a little bit more right now. When things were flowing and frothy, and the last few years the market was great, it was, we kind of throw money around a little bit more, right? We cannot do that now, probably moving forward. So really, really helpful, Abby. Thank you so much. And welcome to Place, by the way.
Thank you, Via. Thank you for the time today. I appreciate it, everyone.
Of course. All right, everybody, we will see you in a couple weeks. And I believe, a little sneak preview, I believe we're going to do part 2 of our expired listing strategy with Brian Crawford. So stay tuned on that, and we will see you soon. And you can find us, by the way, on YouTube, on the Ben Kinney channel. And don't forget to get on our mailing list at benkinneyagenttraining.com. All right, everybody, have a good day.